Since her first day in Congress, Congresswoman Giffords has established herself as a champion of responsible and renewable energy and has worked very hard in the Armed Services Committee to move with sensible amendments and proposals to improve the way we use energy and buy energy and what kind of energy we obtain, and to move toward greater resilience. She's supported the implementation of renewable electricity generation at facilities around the country, including the Soaring Heights solar array at Davis-Monthan, which is the largest solar power community in the United States. She not only talks the talk, she walks the walk. This year she installed a solar array on her home in Tucson, and I might add, Congresswoman, I've got one on my farm in Maryland. So we're delighted and honored all of us to be here today.
In recent years, Jim has focused all of his hard work and his service on one of our nation's most pressing problems, and he spoke about that very eloquently. And I wasn't familiar with your personal narrative of sitting in that gas line, but that would make me mad too. The national security implications of our dependency on foreign oil are truly pressing. And Jim's career and his focus on this is inspiration for me and others in this room as well. When Jim accepted his position as Undersecretary of the Navy in 1977, of course I was a kid at that time, but I remember those gas lines. Our nation was, at that point, was sliding into the last major oil crisis. Prices at the pump were going up every single day, supplies dwindled, and we understood at that point all too clearly the ramifications and our dependence on foreign oil. We have a couple of charts that we're going to point to depict what's going on. We have a chart that continues to look that while prices today actually maintain a fair amount of stability, this crisis quietly continues. And though the causes are more diverse today than they were back in the 1970s, the need to change course has never been more apparent or frankly more vital. Secretary of the Navy Ray Mabus is out there fighting the good fight right now, and he says it best. He says we're sending money abroad to power our own defense. We are too dependent on potentially volatile places on Earth for that energy. We cannot be beholden to resources that are controlled by others. And again, if you're not familiar with this chart, I encourage you to take a good look at it. The green countries are the U.S. friendly, and of course, predominantly the largest countries that we are importing our oil from are non-U.S. friendly. The Department of Defense, of course, understands this. And they understand the grave problem, and of course the Department of Defense is beginning to change course. They're installing smarter grids, building greener ships, developing new biofuels, and also new vehicles. But of course, like many aspects of military strategy, the DoD and the shift to renewable, responsible energy sources is not something they outwardly advertise. In fact, they're pretty quiet about it. Every day at installations around the world and in theater, the DoD is changing the way it does business and is leading a change, frankly, in the United States culture of consumption. Not because greener energy improves our image, but because it provides them with a key tactical advantage. I'd like to look at a second chart. In 2007, the department spent $13 billion on energy. In 2008, the department spent $18 billion on energy. And looking at our entire United States government and consumptions, 93% of all the consumption coming from our government comes from DoD. And of course, that is broken out in the smaller chart, pie chart, and of course, a large chunk of that, of course, goes to jet fuel. At home, our critical national security assets depend on a fragile and vulnerable national grid system, creating a single point of vulnerability. And on this front, the Department of Defense is also making great progress. From the Navy's geothermal project at China Lake to the solar power arrays at Nellis Air Force Base, the department is moving toward large-scale renewable projects that will allow installations to power themselves. But that just doesn't apply to critical infrastructure. The largest solar power residential community in the country, mentioned by Jim, I'm proud to say is in my hometown of Tucson, Arizona, and it's the new base housing development at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base called Soaring Heights. We have some representatives from the local utility, Tucson Electric Power, here with us today. We have Steve Lynn and Larry Lucero. We thank you for your cooperation and your partnership with Davis-Monthan and the Air Force in building this incredible new facility. These simple solutions take tremendous strain off our national grid. They secure our bases and make the grid less appealing when it comes to attacks. But it isn't just about electricity and in terms of the need for modernization for DoD. Our dependency on the battlefield is also stifling our ability to accomplish our goals. We should all become familiar with this image that we had up, and if you don't have it on your home screen on your computer, I just encourage you to spend some time looking at that. This is a typical convoy for supply lines through the mountainous region of Afghanistan. Now, more than a decade ago, when Army planners were developing a modernization plan for ground forces, the system of armored vehicles they chose to run were designed on a hybrid backbone. The platforms at that time, they argued, would be able to traverse open ground quickly and switch to battery power at idle, and then run all of their necessary systems so that they could quietly and stealthily sneak up on the enemy. While that program no longer exists, the hybrid drive system that was developed as part of that system is still a viable alternative to what we have today. And it's a system the Army has already committed tremendous amounts of resources towards. It has developed and tested that system as well. DoDESA builds on the department's efforts to accomplish 4 goals. First, reduce the dependency on oil in the battlefield. Second, task the department to plan holistically for their energy use. Third, decrease electricity consumption at facilities around the world. And fourth, increase the self-reliance of bases by increasing the development of renewables right here at home. The bill requires high-efficiency insulation at forward operating facilities that will immediately reduce fuel consumption in theater and could realize a return on investment if implemented today by the end of the year. DoDESA would also require energy and water audits and an insulation assessment of domestic facilities. It also requires implementation of cost-saving measures at bases, saving U.S. taxpayers and the Department of Defense millions of dollars over the lifetime of those buildings. But renovating old buildings is simply not enough. We also have to look at those new military projects that are breaking ground right now. We have to seize on the opportunity to improve above the current baseline standard. Beginning in 2021, the department will be required to offset 20% of the energy consumed at new facilities with on-site direct distributed generation technology like solar arrays, such as the Soaring Heights facility, wind power, and geothermal under this legislation. Starting in 2016, half of DoD's renewable energy requirements must come from new sources constructed after 1999, with 20% from sources that are still yet to be built. And under this legislation, we will become the first nation in the world to power all of its fighters on biofuels by 2025. Our goal is to cut fuel consumption in half for foreign oil from aviation from 4.1 billion gallons used by our Air Force, our Navy, and our Marine Corps currently. DoDESA also requires the department to take aim at considering the important nexus between energy, security, and national security. And for the first time with this legislation, the department will be required to consider how much energy they use and how their needs are being met. The new requirement applies to the QDR, National Security Strategy, and National Military Strategy. And finally, DoDESA sets overreaching policies for sustainable acquisition projects and new DoD energy performance plans. It requires the DoD to develop an energy performance plan and an implementation assessment for accomplishing their goal that they've already laid out of 25% of renewable energy by 2025. These are the critical first steps that set our military on a path to sustainable consumption and deprive our enemies of the opportunity of defeating us simply by allowing us to continue in those practices that we are currently implementing of defeating ourselves. The legislation is designed to change the culture of consumption within the department without reducing our military's ability to accomplish their primary mission. In total, the core provisions of DoDESA severs the ties binding personnel to pipelines and unleashes the department from the tether of fuel. Here we have an example, a diagram of what this legislation doesn't include, and it is in your packet, so I encourage you to look at it. Thank you so much for being here today and for your time, and we look forward to working with you on this legislation.